The Jared Dillian Show.
I'm Jared Dillian. This is the Jared Dillian Show. If you want to call to talk about your money, please call 844-305-7800. That's 844-305-7800. This is the Jared Dillian Show. You ever see the movie Glengarry Glen Ross? I watched it for the first time probably like 2003, something like that. Probably the best movie about selling ever made. Just an unbelievable movie. And put the coffee down. Coffee is for closers. A, B, C. A always, B, B, C closing. I mean, it's a very quotable movie. Alan Arkin is probably low-key the best actor in that movie. He's really, really good. But Alan Arkin, Al Pacino, Alec Baldwin, Kevin Spacey, oh gosh, I can't remember his name. Jack Lemmon. I mean, really, really good. Levine the Machine, excellent movie. Anyway, we're not talking about closing a deal here. We're talking about negotiating for a deal. This is about when you buy a house. And the whole negotiation process when you buy a house. And a lot of people think it's just about price. And the price aspect of it is actually pretty trivial. You know, if you have a $600,000 house, you'll bid $550,000. They'll come back like $580,000. Then you'll bid $570,000. Then you meet in the middle, $575,000. Everybody meets in the middle all the time. That's the trivial aspect of it. There are other aspects of negotiating for a house, and we're going to talk about it here in a couple minutes. Just as a general rule, you know, it's kind of counterintuitive. If you're looking to buy a house, obviously you like the house, you like it a lot, you want to own the house, but you have an incentive to paint the house in as negative of a light as possible. You basically want to say it's a piece of crap. And the seller wants to paint the house in as positive a light as possible. And it's kind of a paradox because you're the buyer and you love the house, but you have to find all these things wrong with it because it's as soon as you step in that house, the negotiation begins, and you gotta fix this problem, you gotta fix that problem. It just goes on and on and on. As a buyer, you're going to want to rip the house apart, and a home inspection is part of that. Like the home inspector will definitely, these guys. I mean, if you're a seller, it's really your worst nightmare. And I think about that sometimes too. You know, when we bought this house, there were a lot of problems with the inspection, but we overlooked a lot of it because we wanted to buy the house. You know, we fixed a lot of it, but still, when we go to sell the house, some home inspector is going to come in and rip it to shreds. But if you're buying a house, you should be making a series of negative comments to your realtor in order to bring the price of the house down. And it's not, like I said, it's not just the price. You can ask for anything you want. If you like the drapes, then ask if you can have the drapes. If you like a piece of furniture, ask if you can have that. There are other things that you can do to sweeten the deal. I've talked to real estate agents about this. I mean, there's all kinds of things you can do. Like you can offer to pay the homeowner's insurance for an entire, not the homeowner's insurance, the HOA fees for an entire year. So I read a pretty good piece on negotiating for a house. So without further ado, when you're in the market to buy a house, the fun part is browsing listings and touring places in person, imagining yourself in your new abode. The intimidating part is the negotiation. Unlike when you go to buy something in a store, everything in real estate is negotiable, especially if you're the buyer. This back and forth can work in your favor, but there are general ground rules to every negotiation. We're here to demystify the process and explain how to negotiate a house price. When does the negotiation start? Some real estate agents like to say the negotiation process starts when you go under contract with a seller, as in you've made an offer and they've accepted the offer. But it's worth considering your negotiation power even before then, as in the very first time you see the house in person. Realistically, anything the buyer doesn't like can be a negotiating point. This can include repairs that need to be done, what appliances or furniture may come with the home, and any facets of the property that may need to be fixed up or completed. For example, if a house has an unfinished guest suite, this might not be considered a repair, but is still a worthy point of negotiation. Since completing this space would require your time and your money in the future, it might be worth running those numbers by your real estate agent, or even asking a builder to provide an estimate, and then asking the seller to come down in price to accommodate them. This is very commonplace. It's very common, and it's very reasonable, too. I mean, a lot of people say, I'm not going to ask for that. You have to ask for that. Because if you buy the house and you have to finish this, you're going to have to pay for it. The seller has to accommodate you. How does the negotiation work? If negotiation starts the first time you see the house, it's important to note that it doesn't end until you actually close on the property. Closing usually occurs 45 days after you sign the contract, and in between, a whole lot happens to protect the buyer and make sure you're fully informed on your investment. That means that from the time the seller accepts your offer, you typically have over a month to review the home and its documentation and go through the necessary steps to make sure the house doesn't have any hidden problems and is worth the price you're paying. One key step in that process, getting a home inspection. You must get a home inspection. Home inspectors check out all the systems of your house. They check out the plumbing, they check out the electricity, they check out the air conditioning, plus all its nooks and crannies. We have a crawl space underneath the house. It is full of spiders. I have never been in the crawl space because I look in there with a flashlight and it's nothing but spiders. Wouldn't that be a great job for the home inspector to go down in the crawl space with all the spiders? Yeah, I don't really feel like doing that. Once you go under contract, schedule a home inspection ASAP, as this, more than anything else, will alert you to anything major that needs to be discussed and negotiated with the seller. Beyond what the home inspector finds, or anything obvious such as unfinished construction projects, there are a lot of small things you might want to negotiate. Keep in mind that small details may not actually affect the value of the home. Rather than negotiating on price, this is a key point here. This is a key point. Rather than negotiating on price, you might just be asking a seller to include or remove something from the property. The most important factors impacting the value of the home is the location in which it is found, its livable square footage, and the size and usability of the land on which it sits. Other factors such as the presence and size of garages, whether the basement and attic are finished, water damage, old carpeting, old appliances, even creaking floors all impact value, because it can affect whether a buyer is willing to purchase a property with these conditions. We moved into a house in New Jersey that had creaking floors. It was the original floors in the house. The floors were like 90 years old, and we loved it. So, yeah. If you love the furniture in a home you're viewing, you might ask the seller if they'd be willing to include it. Nothing is off limits here. Nothing is off limits. Alternatively, if there's old carpeting that smells like mold, this might be something you negotiate to have removed before closing. Keep in mind that negotiation isn't just about your findings and perceptions in the property. A lot depends on the seller. Negotiating is a lot like playing cards, meaning it's helpful to know a bit about the cards your seller is holding. Get a sense of why your seller is moving and how motivated they are to sell. That is key. If your seller is already settled somewhere else and is renting out the home for extra income, they may be less likely to deal with many buyer contingencies. But if your seller really needs to get rid of the place, either for financial or logistical reasons, they'll likely be more willing to go along with whatever needs to get done to close the deal. Another thing to keep in mind when negotiating, the market you're in and whom it favors. It's basically a supply and demand situation. Right now, since many sellers don't want to put their house on the market during a pandemic, almost every market is at record low inventory levels, making it very much a seller's market. Depending on what other offers the sellers know they can get, there may be more or less willing to negotiate the finer details with you. In a buyer's market, a highly motivated seller might mean you score a better deal, both in pricing and contingencies. So when I bought my last house, the sellers were what I would call distressed sellers. They had financial difficulties. They were running out of money. Somehow, after living in the house for 9 years, they had no equity in the house. And they had refinanced a bunch of times, and they needed to sell the house because they were going to go broke. We squeezed the hell out of them. The inspection didn't turn up much. One thing the sellers wanted to do was to get rid of a lot of furniture. So we ended up taking all the outdoor furniture plus the furniture in the guest room, and this really helped us out. Interestingly enough, we had to pay for this separately by check because the bank won't finance furniture. So we paid $7,500 for the furniture, though we took this off the price of the house. It said in the piece you want to know what cards the seller is holding. Why are they moving? Where are they moving to? Do they need to sell or not really? If you don't have much experience negotiating for a house, you want to be tough. If you're not ordinarily a tough person, you want to get the best deal possible. I'm Jared Dillian. This is The Jared Dillian Show.
The Jared Dillian Show.